Bailee Walker, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Very well, thanks. Very well. Well, look, for the benefit of the audience, it would be great if you could just give a quick intro on yourself, your background. I've obviously checked some of your background on LinkedIn. It's really interesting the variety of different roles that you've had and kind of how it's led you into value engineering. Would love to
Yeah.
hear.
Yeah, of course. My name's Bailee Walker. I lead the global value advisory team at Miro. And as you've mentioned, I have a very non-conventional background, but I'd challenge you to find a value consultant has a conventional background, I'll say. So my background started actually in recruiting. I started at recruitment firms, split desks. So introduction to sales as well as recruitment, built a temp desk, worked in executive recruitment, moved internal. And I kind of got to a place with internal recruitment where I knew I wanted to do more. I recruited for a lot of client facing teams, and it seemed like really interesting work to me. And so I knew I had to find a path to get there. And so I found a tiny little startup called Beamery, and I convinced their head of CS that I would be the right CS hire for their opening the office in Austin because I was a recruiter and it was a recruitment CRM. Knew the audience. I was the audience, and so started my career in the sales arena and the go-to-market arena on the CS side. And we really ran like full desk. Like I was answering intercom tickets and I was working directly with customers on renewals. And I eventually made my way into specializing in implementation. So moving really into a pre-sale or handover type space, and joined Miro actually as a solution engineer. And I loved the work. And about a year into my career here as an SE, we hired an individual named Scott Jeffries, who is very well known, I believe, in the value community. And in meeting him and understanding what he did, I knew that that's what I wanted to do. And so I moved over to the team and have been here for ebbs and flows of the team. And kind of we're in a rebuilding phase right now. And that's how I got here today.
Fascinating, and it's so right with the word you said, community, because it is a pretty small, close knit
Yeah,
community. The whole values
it
universe, right?
is. Yeah.
Everybody kind of knows each other, and they tend to move from company to company with each other as well.
They do. I mean, that's SaaS in general, but I definitely think that the value community, is that way, which is it's great. It's a great supportive community.
Yeah.
It makes for exciting career opportunities. Also, you get to go places where you know people and trust people.
It's also a growing space. So we're seeing more and more companies
Yeah.
actually creating the role of value engineer, value consultant, or value advisor. And earlier on, so traditionally it's been the larger companies that have had that role. We're seeing Series A, Series B companies start to bring in that capability.
And the programs themselves are changing from what they used to be also, right? Like where we think where value engineering was created and how it was created. They talk a lot about it on the value coffee chats. And April talk about it of like value 2.0. That's very much our reality right now. I still have sales leaders who are like, help me find the ROI. And I'm like, sure, but what does your EB think about that? Like, how do we actually bring that to life? So I think it's great to see that programs are being brought in earlier to help articulate value and in a different, more meaningful way. I also see the duality of programs becoming, of course, customer facing. When I think about my team, the majority of their time is spent externally or should be spent externally with clients. But we're also internal evangelists for what it means to go through a PLG to SLG motion. We have to help our product teams understand that you have to be customer centric and you have to be customer empathetic because in order for them to purchase, we have to build something they want that isn't a vitamin, but it's a painkiller. And so it's also educating internally. It's educating our product leadership, our executive leadership of this is what the market's saying, these are the headwinds, and this is the type of stuff that people are looking for.
So many different areas to unpack there. Well, first, because it strikes me because Miro specifically, it's a fantastic product. I've used it, and I'm not just saying that because we're speaking, but honestly,
No, it
um,
really is.
but it's a great PLG motion historically, right? Because you can share it, it's usable. There's very little kind of restrictions on use, of course, until you need more robust capabilities.
Yeah.
But I've seen I was interviewing somebody who was also ex Figma, different universe, but similar kind of motion, where the need for value was so important because these are tools historically that are being used by teams design teams. And a lot of time, the economic buyer may not understand what's the difference. Why do I have to actually pay if you guys have all these different tools?
You've got Microsoft Whiteboard. Why do I need Miro?
Yes,
Haunts me in
yes,
my Yep, no, completely. And I think the one thing I'll add to the, PLG comment you made also is when we think about PLG, yes, the product itself is exciting and can grow, but we also had the pandemic. That really did supercharge a lot of our customer base. Everybody was working from home. Everybody needed a place to work and collaborate. And so we were PLG. There are designers or product managers who purchase Miro and then it spreads within their team based on the functionality. But we also had this supercharged moment between 2020 and call it 2022 where we were being purchased without having to have a value narrative.
yeah,
And
totally.
does is it trains a sales organization that PLG is the way to go and the only way, and you can close large deals that way, which is not a reality in this economy specifically. So it is, yeah, I think it is difficult to quantify the value of collaboration. There's so many layers to it. It's how do we actually measure the utilization or adoption of our product? How do we then tie that into impactful use cases? How do we understand from our champions how those use cases are driving and solving problems for them? And how do we articulate that in a way where the EB is like, yeah, sure, I'll sign a big check, no big deal. I understand how it's impacting my business. It's really difficult to tie something that we think so basic as collaboration to something
Yes.
so complex as new streams of revenue.
And the economic buyer oftentimes really doesn't understand
Yeah.
the product, right? Because
Yeah.
they may not necessarily be the user of the product. They can understand a communication tool like Slack, but when
Yeah.
it's a collaboration tool that the workforce is using,
Yeah.
how does it, yeah, I'd love to know more.
Completely. Completely. No, it's incredibly difficult, and I think we started as a whiteboard, and we've really evolved since then by way of acquisition, integrations, obviously new product development, multi-product offering, and so it's also that element of the education. There's an end user education layer. How do you get people to stop just using stickies and brainstorming and understand, hey, you actually are a product team that needs to do really complex PI planning rituals and agile rituals. Miro is actually a place where you can do that. So there's the end user enablement that is required in order to have the value realization to help a product leader understand the way you used to do something is time intensive, it's cost heavy. There's actually net new benefits you've never even thought of, like quality can be improved through Miro. When I can put 100 ideas on a board faster than I ever could in a room because I have an entire global, like, there's just benefits they've never even thought they were looking for. So it's translating that and new benefits into reasons for purchasing. And until we have that kind of end user value realization, it's difficult to have a conversation of why would you pay for Miro if you have Microsoft Whiteboard if the perception is we do the same thing. So it's a huge like we have to change perception. It's a big challenge.
And I can actually going back to the earlier conversation about your background. I can
Mhm.
see how you've naturally gravitated not just to value advisory, but within Miro, because
Yeah.
if again, I'm just assuming here, but
Yeah.
your natural experience in having worked in HR and understanding roles and really understanding the empathy behind the roles and the skill
Right.
sets, applying that to the individuals using Miro and the value that they are getting must be a real plus.
It's a huge plus, and I'll the way I'll talk about it to a certain extent is in the product context. So there's a horizontal application of Miro that I think is really synonymous with this kind of not up and coming because it's kind of having its moment right now, but DEX, digital employee experience. That is so tied together deeply. And then we have the vertical approach of how do we support specific industries or how do we support specific persona or department based use cases. So we have a huge opportunity to support engineering and product and design teams. But there's also an opportunity to support the employee and to go back to 2020 what you would have expected from your workplace and your employer in 2019 is very different than what people expect today. They expect flexibility, they expect to be able to lead with async collaboration. The employee experience is incredibly important, and it's incredibly different from what it was when I was in those teams and even just 5 years ago. And I went to so there was a Gartner Digital Workplace Summit that I went to in March, and one of the things they talked about actually was we're at a point where there are industry lows of tool adoption, and the reason for that is a couple of things: tool overload. Everybody purchased something in 2020 that procurement's still trying to get rid of. The shadow IT had knew no bounds, and
Yeah.
so there's that element of it. There's the tool sprawl, and every SaaS vendor is like, "We'll help you with tool consolidation." So it's a well-known narrative, right? But in addition to that, we haven't gotten to a place where IT has become strategic. Gartner's begging IT to become strategic. You will not have your teams in the same way this year as you used to because you now have to tie to C-level initiatives. IT teams historically have been very shared service focused. Somebody asks them to get a tool, they get it for them. They manage it, they turn on skim provisioning. That's kind of the end of the story. IT and these kind of digital workplace teams are now being asked to evolve to this new reality where you have to help us deliver on C-level initiatives. And in order to do that, you have to help employees understand what tools they have at their disposal and how do they use them. I think
Yeah.
that's one of the biggest challenges we're going to see, especially with AI. Unless you tell people how to use it for their job and why to use it for their job, people won't touch it. They'll keep doing weird shadow IT, odd tool acquisition, not following best practices. I'm geeking out on Gartner research now.
But whose job is that? Is that the vendor's job? Is that enablement's job, or is that sales
Oh,
ops job?
yes. Oh, it's everybody's job to a certain extent, but I think it depends on the company's resourcing to a certain extent. Is
Yeah.
where are they at in their evolution of digital employee experience? Gartner has their maturity model that, if you subscribe to their frameworks, it is pretty impactful. So, where do they view themselves on that scale, and then how do they internally work cross functionally with enablement teams, with line managers? How are they actually identifying the use cases and then training against them? And that's something that we feel at Miro. Also, we work a lot with IT teams. It's an obvious place for us to be owned
Sure.
to a certain extent. And unless we have an IT partner that really understands our value and how to make us useful, it can be a challenging conversation. We have to help them understand our use cases, the value we provide to the organization, and then how do we help them learn that? How do we train on that? A whiteboard on the surface seems really simple, but it's actually incredibly complex. There are infinite use cases. Unless you
Yeah.
give people direction, it's incredibly intimidating.
And I think that that's ultimately a challenge, right? Because you
Completely.
can do so many things. Where do you start? And
Yeah,
as a result, that question can become paralysis, right?
completely. Yep.
I love the concept of DEX, the employee experience.
Same.
How sophisticated are your buyers in the concept?
It's so interesting because we would think that the largest organizations in the world are the most mature. I would actually argue the opposite because they have a much bigger task in front of them. They have an
Sure.
incredibly global, diverse, widespread population,
It's
and
called transformation at that level.
correct. Correct. Yeah, these transformations for these large organizations take years. They're
Yeah.
incredibly expensive. You're investing in consulting firms, you're changing behaviors and process, you're ripping in or implementing new systems. Transformation for our most strategic customers can really take years and up to a decade. It takes a very long time. So I actually think some of our down market segments are much more nimble. And we actually see, I mean, we see exciting and very deep use cases across our market segments. But I think the smaller, more nimble, maybe more startup focused organizations, we're seeing that IT transformation be a little easier and happen a little faster.
And obviously, this is your first role in or first company that you've worked in the value advisory space. So I guess you can't really compare it to others. But I guess how do you structure in terms of the segments? Is there a threshold of deal size that your team will work on?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, we are officially a global team again. We have presence in AMER and EMEA now. And so in our AMER business is structured a little different than in Europe. And in that's just because of the complexity of the countries, of course, in Europe. But in the US, we have, I would say, three distinct segments. We have our SMB, our mid market, and our enterprise. We refer to it as strategic, and our mid market we refer to as enterprise. And so my value team, my two value advisors in the US are dedicated to line managers and thus a set of individual sellers within region. So we're dedicating them to teams specifically with purpose. And the purpose is to be there for high touch support like business case development. It's also to be a resource to the line manager for enablement. So they're really also there to provide consulting and strategy to those teams so that when there is an opportunity to build a business case, we are there. But there's also the opportunity for the sellers to up-level how they approach their deals. And so their reliance on us for consulting and kind of those kind of earlier on questions, it gets to be a little bit less because they're empowered themselves from a value-based selling perspective. In EMEA, it's a little bit different. We focus a little bit more on revenue thresholds just because of resourcing and our ratios in region, which I think will evolve over time. I would say the business is pretty responsive to our team alignment and our revenue thresholds in the sales capacity. Where we're really trying to figure out how we fit in right now is post-sale and CSM value realization. We are a pre-sale team right now. The way that our team focuses their time, the way that they are compensated is new revenue. But value realization is the only way that you can secure expansions. So we really do have to focus and spend time with our friends in the customer success organization. I really do think that we think about like active usage and kind of customer utilization. It gets dumped on CS a lot. They're the only ones that can solve it, and it's a full company initiative. Like
Has to
driving
be.
monthly active usage and driving adoption for a customer is a full company initiative. Everybody has to be on
It's a
board to
North
make.
Star, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that's kind of how we structure. Like I said, there's predominantly pre-sale focus. We'll eventually evolve to post-sale and value realization. We're just not there yet.
We've seen it. I mean, even our product started as a pre-sale product, and now
Yeah,
we cover the whole thing. We had to expand into value realization
yeah,
because ultimately a business case is hypothetical until you actually start delivering, right?
yeah.
Exactly. And so, but that also means that it creates co-ownership then between
Mhm.
the sales rep and the CSM, and
Completely.
together they're both co-owners of that relationship because there will be that cycle of renewal and expansion. And if you can
100%.
measure how you're doing versus the original business case and course correct throughout the course of the year, then you're in much better shape, right?
Yep. Completely. Completely agree.
It's funny. We work with a lot of different segments. We work with companies who have and they'll roll us out across all their segments: or strategic, enterprise, mid market, and SMB. And a lot of the time, especially in the SMB, the higher velocity, where the traditional value selling is stretched because there's only so much you can do when you have 8, 10, 12 deals per month. And that means win rates are lower because they can't deliver that kind of
Mhm.
value selling. We get asked a lot, like, when do I use a business case? And what we've seen is we've kind of landed on when we do enablement of Simbi is one very simple rule of thumb, and it's works great. Is if your champion is not the economic buyer, you need a business case, right?
Mhm.
Because they need to sell it into somebody else.
Sure.
They're going to need something to, and it's a really good kind of determinant, and it resonates very well with
Litmus test
people.
of a champion also.
Yes,
Are they willing to
absolutely,
bring that to the executive buyer?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And,
It's interesting. I kind of make the joke that for our teams, there's a lowercase business case and an uppercase business case.
oh,
We help with that formalized content, but every deal should have a lowercase business case. There should be a problem statement and a why to somebody purchasing. Every deal needs that, even high velocity that could still be PLG led. There's still a why there.
totally, totally.
So,
I mean, that's exactly it. The business case answers the why. You could be selling to the founder of a three-person company. They just love the product, but
yeah,
there's your why because they know what they get. You may not need an ROI associated with it, but there you go, right?
correct. Correct. Yep. And I also found what we have found with some of our SMB and kind of higher velocity businesses, the ROI isn't gonna sell it. Like, that's not gonna
Yeah.
close the deal necessarily when we have, documented value or well-articulated value, that is enough. They don't need to say this tool has 300% ROI. That is very much a value framework of the past. It's nice to have, but when you have a tool like Miro that is flexible and it powers collaboration and innovation, we hope, the ROI is believable. You have to have meat on the bones.
And I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you structure the value, because
Yeah.
when you talk about a collaboration tool, there is time saving, of course, but then there's probably productivity and output, like better output or better productivity. Do you ascribe a certain dollar value to greater productivity?
Yeah, we do, and but I think it depends on, to a certain extent, how our customers view productivity. Is it a productivity to free up bandwidth, to save costs? So I think we have to do the right type of discovery around productivity in order to position that in the right way. For maybe mid-market or down-market customers, they're trying to bring new products to market faster, and so productivity for them means immediate new revenue streams. But when you have a reliable, predictable schedule of a business, maybe like retail, where they have seasons, they have something really regimented, bringing products to market faster isn't how we talk about productivity. The way we talk about productivity is we make sure you don't miss deadlines. Like it's all about positioning and how people
That's a painkiller.
productivity. Yeah. Yeah.
Really cool. No, I love it. We could talk about this for hours.
Yeah.
Uh, Bailey, two final questions, slightly uncomfortable questions. The first one is, um, obviously you've worked now in value advisory for about two years and change. Actually, before I get to that, before that, you worked as a solutions engineer, and we've seen, we've seen a lot of the time when we do roll out to companies that actually don't have value engineers, the natural owners of value are the solutions engineers, solutions
Or
architects.
yep, completely.
They're more wired to that. They understand it, but they also have that natural consultative relationship with the customer.
And deep curiosity. I think like
Yes,
when people ask what it takes to be a good solution engineer, it's like you just have to be so deeply curious and comfortable not knowing. And so you can ask the questions to find out.
and build the relationship with the
Yeah.
prospect, right?
Completely. Completely. Yeah. Yeah. We always say that our SEs are our kind of first line of value defense. They're helping us with a lot of the technical discovery and technical validation of the tool that can become some of that value narrative.
Yeah, it's a nice kind of handover,
Yeah.
right? And so going back to the questions I was going to ask you. So, who is the best value advisor, value engineer you've ever worked with?
I'll say two folks for different reasons. I think from a leadership perspective, the person that gave me my opportunity to move into value, Scott Jeffries, I learned both a lot about the practice of value engineering, the history of value engineering, as well as how to navigate the complexities of building a value engineering program in a PLG company. I think just everything I learned from him would allude to that. Mike Samuels from Pendo is somebody who's become a mentor and a leader that I network with on a monthly basis. And the way that he is able to kind of cut through the BS and be really direct and well articulated about the purpose of value programs is something I aspire to. You can always tell people tend to be more verbose when they're trying to convince you of something. And I've always found him to be so concise because there's a confidence and a conviction in what he's building. And that is something that I deeply, deeply respect. Yeah, so I would say those are the two people that I probably look up to most. And I also would say my team, Nicole and Shiv on my team and Kathy on my team in EMEA, I look up to them quite a bit. Also, they've come from different organizations. They've come from Miracle and Sprinkler and Workday. And the way that I learn from them on a daily basis, also, they have been in it in a different program or different programs. And so their insight is invaluable. All three of them, I've said in their first like 30 to 90 days, like you have the freshest and probably most important perspective at the company right now. Lean into it. So
And all
I would,
three of those companies have very well established value
yeah.
practices, right? They have some of the best come from there.
Exactly, yeah, they've leveled our program up incredibly with the 3 of them joining.
It's really interesting how you talk about it all connects. The value engineering is a practice, but the sales motion of a company will determine how that value practice evolves. So you're a PLG company. The value at a PLG company is very different likely than value at an SLG company.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's even different when you're trying to become the other. So,
Yeah.
like, I
Yes,
will still say, like, we will always remain blended PLG, SLG,
for sure.
simply because of the way that our, product is structured, our pricing is structured. In our down market segments, there will always be PLG, but we're really having to evolve the depth, and positioning of value. It's a good challenge for the organization. It's a good challenge. Like if I look across the aisle at our marketing team, they have gotten by feature rich documentation, and we're having to change that. The market is asking for something different, and so we have to evolve. And as we move to SLG, that messaging will inevitably evolve. So we're very lucky to have great partners in our product marketing organization who really help us to scale those initiatives as well.
But it must also really stretch the muscles for retention because if
Sure.
people are using the product, and so the sales motion is convince people who are using a free version,
Yeah.
freemium version into a paid version, then retention is just you kind of already built that value story, right?
Yeah, 100%. And then you use that value story to keep selling it to other
Yeah.
departments, to other divisions, cross functionally, et cetera. So you kind of, in a really healthy, supportive way, weaponize their success against them.
Yes. Brilliant. And everybody wins, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And okay, so we've talked about who's the best value engineer you've ever
Yes.
worked with. How about who's the best sales rep you ever worked with?
What a tough one. Because I will say I have been really fortunate to work with some incredible sellers. One that comes to mind, Eric Remy, is a seller at Miro, and he's actually just moved into a sales leadership position recently, which I now get to work with him in a new capacity, which I'm so excited about. And his team gets to work with my team. And what stands out to me about Eric is his operational rigor, his precision, and his intense focus on customer obsession, customer centricity, and how he articulates value through every stage of a deal. And he takes everything that he produces, he takes very seriously. And so he expects the most of his cross functional partners. And so being able to work with him and learn from him was a great opportunity. And he's a great person overall. So I think he definitely stands out to me. Audrey Martinez is a seller at Miro who I think she's been with us about a year right now. And she is one of the most incredible sellers I've ever seen in action. The way that she engages with customers, the way that she knows her business, absolutely incredible. So she's another that I would say I have learned from. And she just, man, she builds hell of a deal. So, yeah.
Super. Fantastic. Bailee, thank
Yeah.
you so much for your time today.
Yeah. It was wonderful. Thank you.